Sara couldn't forget the glittering gold she had seen under that tunnel. A few days later, during dinner, Sara, like usual, chose to eat alone, not wanting any more trouble in her life. Lost in her drifting thoughts, she was startled by the sudden voice of a man approaching her. "Mind if I sit here?" "Go ahead," Sara replied, lifting her head to see a tall young man with long, curly blonde hair. But she didn't care enough to notice much more. "When does your contract end?" he asked. "Why do you want to know that?" Sara responded, her tone distant. "If we could, maybe we should eat together more often," he said casually. "No, I'm not looking to make friends here," she replied coldly. "You're keeping that keyring safe, right?" Max leaned in and whispered near her ear, his voice teasing and full of mischief. Sara froze for a few seconds, then quickly tried to brush him off. "Keyring? I don't know what you're talking about," she said calmly, though a flicker of fear ignited in her chest. Deciding to leave her meal early to avoid any further trouble, she felt something change inside her. A curiosity. Who was this man who seemed to know more than he should? Max's story. Max had once been the lead engineer of the Advanced Biotech Division at Aeon Gene, the top biotech corporation of the Earth Alliance. Aeon Gene didn't just grow artificial tissue or regenerate damaged organs. They went further by developing hybrid neural systems, half-living, half-machine entities, with one ultimate goal: creating non-physical consciousness. Max, known for his analytical brilliance, unwavering ethics, and commitment to scientific boundaries, was a cornerstone in the team that developed the sixth-generation sensory core. This type of core utilized organically grown neural tissue mounted on a nano framework to register user emotions, representing a significant leap toward emotionally responsive AI. One day, Max was tasked with rechecking stability data for a classified trial codenamed Project KD-17, a sensory core not registered in any official records and located in the underground level 3A of Aeon Gene. There, Max discovered something shocking. The neural sample in the core hadn't been grown in a lab, but harvested from an unknown life form. Though treated with nanopreservation, the DNA showed alarming signs. It was asymmetrical. It featured a quadruple helix structure, and most critically, it could rewrite its genes when damaged, a characteristic unknown to any Earth-based life form. Max compiled his findings and submitted a report through Aeon Gene's secure research channel. Simultaneously, he activated a warning via Ethos, a protected whistleblower protocol for researchers. Within 12 hours, Max's lab was sealed. His accounts were deleted and his devices were seized. The next day, the FBI arrested him on charges of aiding planetary-level tech espionage by leaking sensitive biodata to alien entities. He had no lawyer, no media coverage, only a single red-stamped ruling from the Department of Special Security. Exile to a classified detention system. U.S. Prison, Zone 9B, a place that doesn't exist on any map. Max was taken to Zone 9B, deep in the Mojave Desert, far from any civilian map. This unit was designed for extremely dangerous individuals who must not see daylight. There, Max wasn't merely imprisoned, he was tested. Psychological resistance during 72-hour full sensory deprivation, neural response to injected memory disruptors, brain scans exposed to low-frequency pulses, similar to those emitted by Titan biomechanical tissue. They treated him not like a prisoner, but like a lab sample. When death felt close, a new door opened. One morning, with no scheduled interrogation, an unmarked armored convoy arrived at the prison. They claimed to be inspectors from the Special Resource Regulation Commission. But Max knew. They weren't ordinary government agents. They asked no questions and conducted no interviews. They simply scanned his retina, confirmed a hidden code, and issued the command: subject verified. Initiate protocol 04TTSN. Prepare for transfer. Within the hour, Max was loaded onto a biological cargo freighter, the kind used to deliver special laborers to interstellar extraction colonies. Back to Sara. That night, Sara returned to her rusty steel room, where two women shared a bed frame and a dim, flickering light barely illuminated the corners. Her Colombian roommate lay turned toward the wall, coughing. Sara sat quietly, composed as always, though her heart thudded beneath her worn shirt. Better be careful with that keyring. Max's words replayed in her mind like a threat, or a warning. She reached into her pillow and felt the keyring, 6 keys, one for each of the tunnel doors. But now she felt unsafe, as though invisible eyes tracked her every motion. Sara got up, pulled her blanket over herself as if to sleep, but her mind was racing. She tapped lightly on the wall behind her bunk, and her eyes lit up. An idea. She waited. Her roommate's breathing slowed, and the guard's footsteps faded down the metal corridor. Then, Sara silently pulled out a razor-thin strip of steel from her boot. She decided to carve a small hollow in the wall, just big enough to hide the keyring. All night long, beneath her blanket, she scratched at the wall in silence. By morning, she had dug a hole deep enough to conceal it. She slipped the keyring inside, wedged a small stone into the gap and, just to be sure, hung a small wall poster over it. Next day, worksite. Sara and Max showed up for duty as usual. His eyes passed over her, half amused, half testing. "Sleep well?" he asked, like the previous night had never happened. Sara didn't answer. She stared at him for 3 seconds, then turned away, resuming her shoveling. But inside, her mind raced. Who is this lunatic? A spy? A con man? And how the hell does he know about the damn keyring? After that morning, Sara began to notice Max's gaze often following her, not in a scrutinizing or affectionate way, but with the look of someone calculating something. She sensed the patience in the way he approached her, never in a rush, never imposing. He didn't try to start another conversation, but whenever they happened to be assigned to the same team, he was always the one shielding her from the rough guards. A week later, during a night shift in excavation tunnel 3B, near the area where Sara had once discovered a vein of gold, Max approached her, quiet as a shadow. "I know you don't want to cooperate, but there's something you need to see," he said softly, his eyes sweeping toward the ceiling-mounted camera. Sara stepped back cautiously. "Relax, I jammed the cameras at the start of the shift. We've got 9 minutes." He pulled out a thin alloy shard. It looked like a cracked mirror. But when Max tilted it under the miner's lamp, glowing blue-green symbols appeared on its surface, a piece of a holographic map with lit pathways pointing toward a spot deep beneath Titan's bedrock. "I found it embedded in the ancient clay layer of level 4C. It's not human," Max said, his gaze serious. "You heard the pounding from inside the walls before, didn't you?" Sara nodded slightly. "I believe something is buried beneath Titan. This fragment serves as a guiding beacon, but I can't go alone. I need someone smart, observant, and not as insane as the rest of the inmates here." She stared at him for a moment. "And if I refuse?" Max gave a faint, cold smile. "Then in a week, I'll go alone. And maybe I'll die underground. But if I survive, the first name I report to the overseers will be yours." That night, Sara returned to her cell in silence. But inside, her thoughts were a swirling storm. She didn't know how much she could trust Max, but part of her believed, or wanted to believe, that he was telling the truth. 3 days later, Max and Sara were assigned to a survey crew in a new shaft, Extraction Zone 5F, labeled Unstable, Do Not Dig Deep. But when the crew dug beyond the allowed limit, a blast of hot, damp gas burst from the rock face, carrying a sharp, burning ozone-like stench. Everyone staggered back, the vapor making them cough and choke. Chaos broke out as workers fled in all directions. Sara suddenly felt dizzy and breathless, disoriented by the gas. Her vision blurred, and as she tried to stumble away from the suffocating cloud, a strong hand grabbed her arm and pulled her swiftly to safety. Only when they reached the outer gate of Zone 5F did she vaguely recognize Max. Moments later, the tunnel began to tremble, and the emergency siren blared. The piercing alarm echoed throughout the mine. Red lights blinked from every emergency signal, casting a glow on the dust-covered faces of the survivors. And in Sara's eyes, there was only one thought: Titan was warning them. She panted, leaning against the cold, rusted steel wall outside the tunnel. Max stood beside her, his hand still firmly gripping her shoulder, as if to make sure she was conscious. "You okay?" he asked in a low voice, his eyes flicking toward the monitoring station a few hundred meters away. Sara gave a faint nod. "That gas. It's not normal mining gas. Its smell was awful." Max nodded, his face unreadable. "That was biovapor. It used to be deployed in battlefield biodevices. It's bad news that it's showing up here." Sara stared at him silently for a while. "You knew?" "I suspected." Just then, a group of guards stormed in, barking orders to disperse the workers. Max immediately dropped back into his role as a mute laborer, giving Sara a subtle look, a silent signal to keep her mouth shut. After the incident in Shaft 5F, Sara began to see Max differently. She didn't completely trust him, but she no longer questioned his every move. In a world where anyone could betray the other for a few extra hours of rest or a slightly richer protein ration, Max, at the very least, had risked his life to save hers. That meant something. The following evening, they happened to receive their rations during the same shift. On the cold steel table in the canteen for Sector B workers, she ran into Max again. This time, Sara was the one to initiate conversation. "So, what do you think they'll feed us today?" Max raised an eyebrow and smirked slightly. "Just enjoy it. Not like we can change anything." Sara shook her head in resignation. After collecting their food, they sat across from each other and began a light conversation. At that moment, Helka arrived. "Mind if I join you two?" she asked with a smile. "Be my guest, lady," Max replied casually. Sara responded with a polite look that suggested she didn't mind. "I'm Helka, Sara's roommate. Nice to meet you." "Just call me Max," he said. "So, what brought you two here?" Helka asked. "What about you, beautiful?" Max grinned teasingly. "There's got to be a special reason for someone like you to end up here." Helka caught the tone and played along. "If I hadn't been dragged here, I'd probably be watching soap operas and stretching out on a comfy sofa right now." Sara smiled. "I think that's what everyone here dreams about these days." The three of them continued chatting amiably throughout the meal. A few days later, Sara and Max were assigned to work in Ventilation Shaft 2A, one of the rarely monitored shafts. There, they found a moment to rest in a hidden corner, where the mine light cast only a faint glow on the damp stone ceiling. Sara spoke softly, her voice probing. "Do you believe there's something beneath Titan?" Max stared at the wet rock wall for a moment, then nodded. "I don't just believe it. I've seen it and read a little about it." "So what are you planning to do with it?" "Why do you ask me that?" Max turned toward her. "Did you see something too?" Sara deflected. "No. You seem like someone with secrets, so I guessed." A few days later, Sara and Max were assigned to work in Ventilation Shaft 2A, one of the rarely monitored shafts. There, they found a moment to rest in a hidden corner, where the mine light cast only a faint glow on the damp stone ceiling. To their surprise, Helka soon appeared, covered in dust but still wearing her usual crooked smile. "Didn't think I'd find you two hiding here," she teased, dropping her gear beside them. "Looks like I'm in the same shift today." Sara offered a faint smile, still catching her breath. Max simply nodded, not entirely used to Helka's cheerful presence. Helka sat down on a nearby rock and pulled out a half-broken thermos. "Tea? Well, something that used to be tea." She passed it to Sara first, then to Max. Sara raised an eyebrow. "You always bring this stuff?" "Only on shifts that suck," Helka grinned, "which is basically all of them." As they rested, Helka continued talking, her tone casual, even playful. She asked about their previous lives before Titan, joked about the miserable food, and shared stories of other inmates who tried and failed to dig escape tunnels. It was clear she was trying to break through the hard outer shells both Sara and Max had built around themselves. Max, usually quiet and guarded, surprised Sara when he chuckled at one of Helka's sarcastic remarks. "You're not like the others," Helka said eventually, looking at Sara. "Most people here stop caring after the first month. You still look like someone who's trying to figure out the rules. Sara looked away. Maybe I just haven't accepted them yet. Well, Helka said, standing up and brushing the dust off her pants. That's a start. You two are different. And different usually means interesting. Or dangerous. She winked and walked off toward the next shaft section, leaving behind a strange warmth in the cold, damp air.